I have the pleasure of leading off with my partner in crime, Christy Bernal, if she wants to come up and join and grab the mic from Joe, which she is. But together, well, really quick, here's our agenda before I lead off with Christy here. But we are opening up first to talk about federal discretionary grants. Christy is my amazing counterpart at the State Highway Administration, who thought she was just going to start a rotation on discretionary grants, but it is a rotation that never ends with the bipartisan infrastructure law. But we wanted to take a moment to talk to you about a couple of opportunities. Given the focus of this roadshow initially, we know it's grown, but want to highlight in particular the bicycle and pedestrian opportunities coming up this year as we compete for the last year of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy to lead us off, and we will have some fun tag teaming.
All right, so good morning, everybody. Just to kind of get started with the federal infrastructure grants, the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has created a unique opportunity for Maryland and, of course, our local partners to access federal funding. By having guaranteed funding, it provided predictable funding opportunities and timelines for the local partners to plan and advance the most competitive projects. Of IIJA funds, about a third has been won through competitive grants. But this is it, guys. This is the last fiscal year of the IIJA funding. So we can quickly highlight a few of the active transportation grant opportunities. So, Safe Streets and Roads for All. This grant opportunity is only for the local government and tribes to directly apply for. MDOT is not eligible. $1 billion is in guaranteed funding annually has been available. The program provides funding to support comprehensive development of safety action plans, demonstration projects to enhance roadway user safety, and implementation projects that are on approved safety action plan. It is considered a two-step program since you must have an approved safety action plan or an accepted equivalent before seeking construction funding. Implementation projects can include multimodal road safety, user investments, and strategies to improve user behavior or safety operations. What is nice about this grant opportunity is that it does not require a benefit cost analysis. So if you're familiar with a lot of the federal funding, especially for construction, that is one of the big requirements that was required. It is an 80-20 split, so 80% federal funding with a 20% match. We are expecting that the next call for applications to open up in the spring of 2026, so pretty soon. I'll go ahead and pass it back to Sean, and he can talk about the other ones.
Thanks, Christy. Really quick on Safe Streets too, I just want to put a finer point on the planning and demonstration eligibility, right? So you can go in for planning, but demonstration funding has really become a backdoor construction pot because USDOT has told us they have more planning money in this program than they know what to even do with. So if you have an idea to potentially advance engineering studies further along for a project in a safety action plan or say on your highway safety improvement plan or something like that on a countywide level, you know, wink and a nod. They have basically told us they have more planning money than they know what to do with. So I highly recommend trying to play in that bucket, and with the demonstration funds, you know, there really is more opportunity than just a plan. You can actually advance project work specifically. One other point too, just to put a finer point on, strategies to improve user behavior or safety outcomes. I want to put a finer point on that just briefly. That means operating funds are available for this. So the behavioral outcome improvement, that can include enforcement, that can include education. So this is also one of the few federal opportunities where operating funds are potentially at the table, depending on what you're asking for, given that so much of those programs at the federal level are focused on capital. Okay, Tiger, raise, build, raise. All right, we're back to build. Grants are open now. This is probably one of the most well-known as well as the most competitive opportunities at USDOT. Pretty much every single surface transportation project is eligible. That includes ports. It also includes surface access roads to airports, of course, bike ped, but really everything under the sun is eligible if it's surface transportation for this, which also makes it so competitive. But it's one of the most well-worn paths for local governments to directly access funds. With 2 fiscal years ago, local governments receiving more than 60% of awards. Joe mentioned, but this is one we are actively looking for and continuing to engage partnerships on. Last year, this was the first year of the Trump administration, we actually won a build grant in partnership with Washington County, with MTA through our locally operated transit systems to fully fund design at my favorite thing, 100% cost share. That's actually the best opportunity about build because of it being actually authorized in law now. There are 2 opportunities to access 100% funding. One, if you're in a defined rural area, which I believe they define as any metro area under 200,000. And then if you're in a defined area of persistent poverty, that's pretty simple to look up on census area maps, but you're eligible for 100% funding. So we were able to access that with Washington County and pass that through to them, and we were really proud of that grant because it was, I think, one of 9 transit grants in the nation that even won under the new administration. So those partnership opportunities we're always looking for. This is open right now, due at the end of February, but certainly be aware of the changing administration priorities, right? We're seeing a lot more language around moving families and a lot more focus on autonomous vehicles and kind of innovation, AI type stuff. So we really encourage you that you really need to tell your story if you're thinking about build in particular. And I'm always happy to share any storytelling tips. I have 3 young kids, so bedtime stories is a forte of mine. And I'm happy to bring those skills to your local grants. Christy? Or me? I'll keep going. All right, BIP. This one wants to make me cry a little bit, but the Bridge Investment Program is an exciting one. There's kind of 2 buckets here. There's a large bridge grant program. It has to be a total project cost of over $100 million. So probably not a great fit for local governments, but there is also, I'll call it a small BIP and a planning BIP program for projects under $100 million. And why I want to cry is because we had a couple of grants we were actively working on, and this notice of funding opportunity came down a week before the deadline. This was supposed to go in, I believe, in November, but unfortunately it came down. We're hoping it comes back up and is posted in the spring. But we want to highlight this one because in law, you are required to consider a bicycle and pedestrian path, or at least accommodation on your bridge to be eligible in this, as long as it connects to a larger pedestrian or bikeway network. I think that's probably a lot more relevant for local bridges than us on interstate bridges as the state, but want to highlight that accommodation. And then, a great opportunity. We had a great success with our friends in Cumberland to look at a study to help to pave the groundwork for an eventual replacement of the Cumberland Viaduct there. And we're really happy that opportunity advanced. But again, we're, as Assistant Secretary McAndrew mentioned, we're always looking for partnership opportunities. And we have a lot of resources for you guys in the room. We've worked hard across our modes to try to consolidate opportunities on federal grants. We have a newsletter. It goes out once a month. It highlights project awards, open funding opportunities, really a great resource. But our web pages might be even better than the newsletter. So if you go to MDOT.maryland.gov/IIJA grants, you can see an overview of pretty much every IIJA program that we work to write up. If you want to go to backslash grants, you can actually see our grant applications at MDOT, which I've been told many times has been a really helpful tool for local governments to kind of see the story we're telling and take some notes from us. And then we also have a specific local opportunities page. These links will all be sent out, but that really takes a finer point on grants that local governments are eligible for. And as final takeaways here, as Christy mentioned, we don't know what the future holds for us, but it really was a historic law with guaranteed funding. There's no guarantee we're in this environment ever again, and it does potentially expire, in this fall. So this is really the last round where we're going to see this upfront money without needing appropriations from Congress. So do your best to plan ahead. Project narratives, tell your stories to your 5-year-olds like me. Think about your grant opportunities. That's what we're here today, and really market your story. That's our takeaways for you there. And thank you very much. I'm going to peek back. For our next amazing presentation, I wanted to bring up Brittany and Annika from SHA. They have some awesome grant opportunities, a lot more to offer you than me. But we have some great presentations, I think, on TAP and rec trails and some awesome grant programs from SHA. So I will turn it over to them.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. Today, Brittany and I are going to be presenting the SHA Grants Program Overview. So the purpose of the Grants and Programs Management team is to administer many different types of funding sources. And today we're going to be focusing on recreational trail programs and transportation alternatives. Grants and Programs Management Division, we work together with the project sponsor to navigate state and federal funding requirements and achieve different project milestones.
The Transportation Alternatives Program is a competitive, reimbursable federal aid program that supports active transportation and related projects. It funds initiatives such as building bicycle and pedestrian facilities, restoring historic transportation structures, converting abandoned rail corridors into pedestrian trails, mitigating highway runoff, other projects that enhance mobility and encourage community connectivity as well.
And the Recreational Trails Program, or RTP, is a competitive, reimbursable federal aid program that funds the development and maintenance of recreational trails and trail-related facilities.
And for federal funding allocation, Transportation Alternatives funds are allocated between 3 major metropolitan planning organizations, BRTB, TPB, and WMAPCO, and state flex funds that can be awarded to any area of the state. Recreational Trails funds are treated similarly to state flex and can be obligated to any area of the state.
The funding fundamentals. So our grant funding is 80% reimbursable with 20% required as match. The project sponsor should prepare to provide 20% match to SHA administrative costs as well as construction oversight costs if those apply. And grant funding is eligible for non-infrastructure projects, feasibility studies, design, construction, and trail maintenance.
Funding fundamentals. Non-infrastructure funding, sponsors must submit a complete scope of work, cost estimate, and study area if applicable. For feasibility study funding, sponsors must submit a complete scope of work, cost estimate, and project map of the desired location. For design funding, design should be completed from 0 to 100% complete or to complete. Sponsors must submit concept level drawings demonstrating alignment of project limits, limits of disturbance, right-of-way impacts, and community outreach for the project. Planning level costs and material estimates are also required.
To continue on that, for construction funding, the project sponsor must submit 30% preliminary design plans, as well as include a detailed cost estimate, limits of disturbance, right-of-way impacts, and community outreach. For the trail maintenance funding, the sponsors will submit a complete scope of work, cost estimate, project map, and then we also highly recommend that you include a trail maintenance plan.
For transportation alternatives eligible project categories, number 1, on and off-road pedestrian and bicycle facilities. 2, infrastructure-related projects and systems that provide safe and accessible routes for non-drivers. 3, conversion of use of abandoned railroad corridors for trails. 4, construction of turnouts, overlooks, and viewing areas. 5, inventory control, removal of outdoor advertising. 6, historic preservation and rehabilitation of historic transportation facilities. Continuing, archaeological activities relating to impacts from implementation of transportation projects, vegetation management practices and transportation right-of-ways to improve road safety, environmental mitigation activities for transportation construction, stormwater, and habitat connectivity, vulnerable user road safety assessments, safe routes to school projects, and recreational trails projects are all eligible TA project categories. The Safe Routes to School initiative is to enable and encourage children in kindergarten through 12th grade to walk safely, roll, and bike to school. For the infrastructure projects, they include feasibility studies, design plans, and construction projects. They consist of sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, and other pedestrian safety improvements within 2 miles of a school. Emphasis on within 2 miles of a school for Safe Routes to School eligibility. Continued non-infrastructure projects, they include educational programs, coordinators, directed outreach, events, and materials that promote safe walking and biking. In 2025, MDOT launched a Safe Routes to School coordinator pilot with 3 counties and Baltimore City awarded funding for 3 years of Safe Routes to School coordinator salaries. If you have any questions, please reach out to the email included in the slide. If your program is interested, then just reach out to us.
These are the recreational trail eligible project categories: maintenance of existing recreational trails, development of trailside facilities, including wayfinding and signage, lease and purchase of construction and maintenance equipment, construction of new trails, including rerouting, acquisition of easements and property, assessment of trail conditions for accessibility and maintenance, development of promotional materials or educational materials to promote safety and environmental protection, installation of trail structures like boardwalks, and rehabilitation of trail structures. Here are some of our previous project examples. On the left is the Shady Grove Metro Access. This was a transportation alternatives program project for design and construction that allowed for bicycle and pedestrian access. On the right is the Indian Head Boardwalk, which is an example of a recreational trails new trail structure. More examples that we have: Baltimore Street Access. This is also a transportation alternatives program project, and it converted the street into a one-way road, widened the sidewalks, and it created a more walkable corridor there. And finally, the Burkholder ORV Trail Resurfacing Project. This was a recreational trail program project, and it was completed in 2004. Oh, who can apply for these grant opportunities? You can, if you fall in one of these categories, such as local governments, transit agencies, or nonprofits. Our application process every year is housed on Maryland One Stop. So you'll navigate to the website you see here and search the name of the application. There is one application for both RTP and TA projects. because the application is designed to select the best funding source for your project scope. The application window will be announced shortly, so please continue to check the MDOT SHA website. And while we're waiting, please keep in mind that each application must include these details here. And a little bit about our project process. Our project awards typically occur in the fall. Then you will have a kickoff meeting where you'll meet your program liaison, like either Brittany or I or many others. Then we go into the initiation phase before we can do procurement, project activities, and finally reimbursement and closeout.
Additional transportation alternatives and recreational trail resources are included on this slide. There are 4 websites that you can go to. You can go to the Transportation Alternatives website, the Recreational Trails website, or the Guidance for Local Public Agencies and Subrecipients of Federal Funds, number 3, and 4 Federal Grants Resources website. Okay, and takeaways. Be prepared, okay? Be prepared. The formal dates will be announced shortly for our application window for this year, but please plan ahead, know your project narrative, market the story, build support, and ensure you have all the project documents prepared for the grant application. Be sure, cost estimate, the scope location, and the map. Please make sure you have those documents and be prepared. Thank you from the grants team. We appreciate you and we look forward to receiving your applications.
Thank you.
Okay. I see a couple of our partners here, people who we've worked with in the past and present and hopefully the future. As Sean mentioned, we're open. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But our office is in MDOT under the Motor Vehicle Administration. We're a very small but mighty office that focuses on the behavioral parts of traffic safety. So none of that, no building, but the safety, the behaviors, and how we can make changes. These are just some of our top priority emphasis areas. We are looking at everything from ped bike to our drivers, impaired occupant, and so forth. But if you have interest in things beyond ped bike, I can connect you with the correct people in our office. So as was mentioned before, we're kind of in that last part of the IIJA. We're cycling through, we get that money funneled through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. That's where we fall under, that behavioral side again. And then we get that to go out to our partners for subrecipients from us. We also receive state funding for pedestrian and bicycle related projects. That funding is a little bit different. We have a little bit more flexibility. I'll go into that in just a little bit. But when you apply, the biggest question I get is, do I apply for federal or state? You just apply for the grant. We go through and figure out what you're asking for, what your needs are, where the money is accessible, and most importantly, which rules apply, because state and federal, as we know, all have different kind of rules. So the big thing with this one is we are not an engineering infrastructure grant. We can't build sidewalks, we can't build bike lanes, but we can work with engineers when it comes to education, when it comes to working with our EMS and law enforcement partners. So if you have a new project going on that you need to educate the community, engage the community, that could be something that our grant would be eligible for. If you're not in the infrastructure engineering side of the fence and you work with schools, you work with community events, you work with a bunch of different things, we can help you with that engagement and that outreach and education through multiple different ways. Kind of think of outside of the box sometimes when it comes to the behavioral side of things. And a lot of our funding does go to our law enforcement for enforcement on the roads for all of those traffic behaviors. So if your law enforcement agency in your particular region, locality does not have a connection with our office, we can get that as well. So I don't have the new cover yet, but we're waiting for Federal Highway to approve the state strategic highway safety plan. But that plan is the overarching plan for all of the state to drive those traffic deaths and serious injuries down to zero. I can say numbers aren't final, but we're at about a 20% reduction from last year's fatality numbers. So all of our hard work is really working to get those growth. So it's a 5-year plan. Once we get the approval from Federal Highway, which we should by the end of the month, that's the plan that we will be guiding everything through. And so I bring that up because a lot of what we want to do is going to be based out of that plan. So it's not too different from what we already have, but we want to make sure we're focusing on those. And so those people who are eligible, it's probably everybody in this room, nonprofit, government agency, higher education, schools, local governments. If you're unsure if you are eligible, I'm happy to answer any questions. Our grants are very competitive, and the vulnerable road user world, ped bike safety, I also do speed program safety, they have I want to say gained in popularity, which is a good thing. However, that also means they've become highly competitive. All of our grants are highly competitive, but we did see an increase last year, specifically in that ped bike speed realm. So if you've got questions, I can help you over the next couple weeks. Don't hesitate to reach out if you're thinking about putting something together. Data-driven. We have data on our website. There's data you guys can get for your local jurisdictions, but include that data. Show us what the problem is, who is getting affected, where we need to reach out to. That's a key element with these competitive grants. Again, ours focuses on behavioral change. So if you're unsure about what that could mean or how to go through it, just think of like a safety campaign. We have those statewide, but we can do some local. Think about working with your schools. We have some grantees now who have bike rodeos that go in schools and community events. We have youth ambassadors throughout different parts of the state. So there's lots of different things that you can do for that behavioral change. It has to be evaluated. Most grants, as you know, once you put it in, you get all that information, and at the end of the grant cycle, ours, we also have to do evaluations quarterly as you do your claims, but it has to be, so if you, say, put in for bike helmets, show the need for bike helmets, show who received the bike helmets, and any feedback you may get out of those events. Ours is 100% reimbursable, but it's reimbursable. So you put the money out first, file the claim, and then we pay you back. But 100%, no match, no 80-20 there, 100% for us, which I know is sometimes a good thing to get that. So thinking about projects, like what would be considered? So you heard me mention the SHSP, that anything that falls under the umbrella of that is definitely going to be a project considered. NHTSA has countermeasures that work, proven countermeasures that work. If your project falls under that, good chance that that's going to be in that running. We also had a pedestrian and bicycle assessment a few years ago. That's on our website. Anything related to that pedestrian and bicycle emphasis assessment is also going to be. That is different from the VRU assessment that is attached to the State Strategic Highway Safety Plan, but it was an assessment done by NHTSA on all of our programming throughout the state. And then, most importantly, new ideas, innovation. We know behavior is going to be something that's a little bit trickier. So if there's something new, maybe you saw it in another city, another jurisdiction, bringing those things and really showing how we can apply it to Maryland or your local jurisdiction is key. When you do the application, there's things to consider. Is this going through, which emphasis area? Obviously, I'm focused on the ped bike speed. What's your target population? Are you looking at a really small project, a kind of jurisdictional wide project, or something that's the whole state? The proposed solution. So when you figure out what you want to put in for,
How are you going to make those changes? Is that going to be through reaching out to 10 high schools, reaching out to, so many community groups, all of those things? And then again, that how is it going to be evaluated? And those educational pieces, if you're evaluating, some of the things you can do is pre and post surveys. You can get feedback information from those who attend the events. This is kind of a rundown, if you had to write an outline for our grants, this is what you would want to do. You'd have your problem statement, that would really include a lot of your data, your proposed solution, what you would like to do, action steps, that's what your grant is going to really carry out. We are going to order 500 helmets. We are going to distribute 200 lights. We are going to go to 10 educational outreach events. That's what your action steps. Goals, how many people you want to reach out to, how many people you expect in attendance, anything else that you feel that's relevant, definitely put it in there. A timeline, and I get this question a lot because we have state and federal funding, because the time frame is different. Just write it in a quarterly. First quarter I'll do this, second quarter I'll do that, third quarter, fourth quarter, etc. Because that way it just makes it real easy. It doesn't have to be, oh, well, if I get state funding, I want it at this time frame. It goes better by quarter. And if we need to adjust, we can. And then we also have salary and benefits, contractual services. Contractual services, a good point of that one would be if you do the bike rodeo, but you want to hire somebody to come in, or an LCI, a certified trainer to come in and work with you. That's where that would be. Other direct costs, that would be your helmets. We don't do giveaways necessary. Everybody always says, well, what about, a t-shirt or something? No, it's got to be an actual something that can use. But those blinky lights, bike helmets, any safety material, whether it's educational or actual, something to go on, kids' backpacks or anything of that nature would be covered. So helmets and lights tend to be a lot of the big ones. But again, your grant doesn't just have to have physical things. It can also have those educational components. That also includes educational materials. If it's not already something that we supply, we have a ton of educational and social media information that comes out of our office. Please ask us first before you put it into your grant, because it might be something that we just say, oh, look, we're putting it right in the mail. You don't even have to include that. And then safety campaigns. We do have one overarching statewide safety campaign run out of our office, Be the Driver. We have a local BM out of the Baltimore metropolitan area for Look Alive, and then we have a Washington one based out of the DC region called Street Smart. We actually work with Virginia, DC, and WMATA on that one. So we do have some safety campaigns, but if you have a specific, we know that this is an issue. For example, like if you've got a new pedestrian hybrid beacon coming in and you really want to focus on some kind of targeting with that, that could be something, if it's very specific, we could do looking at that campaign for that area. I mentioned that we have a number of funds that go towards our law enforcement. For those interested, also that can include training and some equipment. So if there are questions, I can direct you to our law enforcement liaisons, and I'll talk about them in just a minute. So as noted, big, we opened last week. So now is the time to get those highway safety grants in. I'm going to show you a screenshot of our website, but MDOT.gov, that's our website. Go to grants. That's going to give you everything you need to know. We use a system called Grants and Projects for Safety, GPS. Everybody who puts an application in needs that. It'll say it'll take you 2 days to get an account. I can tell you right now, we're working feverishly. Anybody who puts one in is likely getting an account within the next few hours. Our deadline, it is a Saturday, but it is February 28th. So you have until February 28th at 11:59 p.m. So this is the best part, because I feel like every other grant show in the previous years, I'm like, we're this close to putting it together. So you got some time to put all this together. The funding, you heard me mention that state and federal. Our state funding runs July 1 through June 30th. The federal funding runs October 1st through September 30th. Again, that's not something that you would have to determine. We will make those determinations for you. We do have application availability for mid-year grants. If there is something that you really need to focus on right now, you know it's something of a hot topic, you can reach out to us and go over those, or kind of a case-by-case scenario based on the funding that's left over from previous years. So here is the screenshot of our website. You just go right to grants. You can, safety grants will give you an overview, how to apply. That'll take you right to where you need to go. And that is our grants and projects for safety. So every user, there has to be at least 3, maximum 4 users in this system. Each one is role specific. And then you would go in and it's kind of just like a fill in the blank on all the different things. A lot of writing though, but fill in the blank nonetheless. And then for the new users, there's that special spot right there. It says click here. It says 2 business days, but again, right now we're rolling them as fast as we can. And you heard me talk about the law enforcement liaisons. We also have community engagement team members. I was talking to a partner this morning, and I was saying that some of the grants will go through me. I do statewide pedestrian bicycle speed programs, but we have our community engagement team that goes through our regions. We are actually, region 4, the western part of the state, is absorbed by the 3 others. He is no longer with us. He's enjoying some retirement. But they would cover that particular area. So if you put a grant in, I might be your first contact, but I might have to introduce you to somebody in the community engagement team to go forward with the grant. And then our law enforcement liaisons. We have 4 throughout the state and a 5th one who handles MDTA, MSP. So we have a resource of law enforcement liaisons. Every single one of them are retired law enforcement from somewhere in the state. So they have that knowledge of working with law enforcement and direct questions that they're used to talking about. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there were some people I'll meet with later today, but if they're virtual, definitely reach out to me, get on my calendar within the next week and a half so we can get everything ready for our close before the February 28th deadline. Thank you all so much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Quinn Wallace. I'm an active transportation planner here at MDOT in the Secretary's office. It's good to see so many of you here today with us. And I manage the Kim Lamphere Bikeways Network program, as Sean said, otherwise known as Bikeways. I'll be providing an overview, a few program updates, and some tips and tricks for your FY27 Bikeways application. The Kim Lamphere Bikeways Network program was established in 2011, and it supports the planning, design, and construction of bicycle transportation projects across the state of Maryland. Since the program's inception, MDOT has awarded more than $42 million, as you heard, to 256 projects across the state. And these range from designing and constructing protected on-street cycle tracks to shared use paths to quick builds and much more. Bikeways is a state-funded program administered by MDOT, and as such, it's fairly nimble. Bikeways projects often advance quickly compared to our projects with federal funds. And in 2020, the state legislature renamed the program in honor of Kim Lamphere, who's a tireless advocate for safe bicycle access across Maryland. We made a few updates to the program that took effect last year, and Bikeways can now fund first complete streets treatments such as protected intersections where bicycle facilities are present, benefiting more users, and also state of good repair maintenance activities like replacing bike racks for minor retrofit grants. I encourage you to keep these new eligible activities in mind as you think about your applications for this year. We also updated our program criteria to support the state's priorities and to elevate safety for all Marylanders. Prospective Bikeways projects must meet 2 or more of our new eligibility criteria, and we'll get into each of those specific criteria on a couple of slides later. But they now include projects in areas highlighted by the VRU assessment and in disadvantaged communities. And it's worth saying again, Bikeways can now fund state of good repair and complete streets improvement projects for minor retrofit grants, and there are full descriptions of eligible project types on our website. Bikeways reimburses up to 80% of your total project costs with a 20% local match. These can also be staff in kind hours or a cash match. Increasingly, Bikeways awards are being used as a match for federal awards, such as from the Transportation Alternatives Program that you heard about earlier today. That's often for construction projects or large-scale design projects, but it's important to note that applicants still need to provide that 20% local match. But just stepping back from a total project cost perspective, the federal award would be 80% of your total project costs. The Bikeways award would be 16%, and then locals would provide 4%. There are 3 eligible Bikeways project categories: design projects from concept and feasibility studies up to 65% design, minor retrofit projects, which really run the gamut but range from bike parking to concrete buffers, bollards, quick build improvements, and construction projects. And we fund from 65% design to being fully installed. The maximum funding for Bikeways projects is $500,000, but that varies a bit by project type, which we'll get into on another slide as well. So shown here are the eligible Bikeways applicants and our eligibility criteria in full. Eligible applicants generally include government entities and nonprofits, and you can take a look at the full list here. And eligibility criteria for Bikeways projects include access to transit, which we define as being within 3 miles of a rail station or a major bus hub. The project is a county priority per the most recent priority letter to MDOT. Increases access to or is located within a sustainable community or bicycle and pedestrian priority area, aka a BIPA. It's within or increases access to a designated main streets or a major institution. Increases access to a low-income area, and lastly, provides a safety intervention by lowering the level of traffic stress by 3 or more levels. And the state has a bicycle level of traffic stress map that you can take a look at online as you put together your application. And again, your project does not have to meet all of these eligibility criteria, just 2 or more, and there's more details on our website. So here are our program categories for Bikeways in full. First, we have design. These are the majority of our ongoing Bikeways projects. And these fund from concept up to 65% design. The maximum award that a design project can receive is $400,000, and design projects must be completed within 2 years per your grant agreement. Secondly, we have minor retrofit projects. These are infrastructure projects like bike lanes, bike parking, bike counters, storm grade upgrades, and now complete streets, quick builds, and state of good repair projects. The maximum award a minor retrofit project can receive is $200,000, and minor retrofits must be completed and installed within 2 years. And lastly, construction. Bikeways funds on and off-street facilities and bridge projects as well. The maximum award that a construction project can receive is $500,000, and it must be completed within 3 years. The exception to this is if it's a match for your federal award, then we align the timelines so that gets increased to 5 years to match TA timelines. It's important to note a few ineligible project activities as well. Citywide or countywide bike master plans we do not fund. Mountain bike projects don't qualify as transportation trails, so we also don't fund park loop trails, sidewalks, and generally pedestrian-focused improvements unless it's part of a complete streets minor retrofit project. So for this year's grant cycle, we anticipate awarding $1 to $2 million in new Bikeways grants. That number is what we call squishy and is definitely subject to change, but we look forward to receiving your applications. The application opens in spring and typically between April and May, and then awards are announced in the fall, typically in September. And if you're considering putting an application and we're not scheduled to connect this afternoon, please do reach out to us at mdbikeways@mdot.maryland.gov, and I've got my email on the last slide here before the application window opens. And here are a few tips to consider when putting together your application. First, applications are submitted online via our website. If you haven't checked out the Bikeways website yet, I encourage you to do so. We highly recommend including letters of support in your application as well. Please also include any relevant documents that mention your project, like county priority letters and adopted plans. And as a reminder, your Bikeways award can serve as a 20% non-federal match for funding to several federal award programs, including the TA program. We have several resources to help you prepare your Bikeways application as well. First is our design and implementation guide that helps you plan the life cycle of your project from concept to construction. We have our eligible areas project map visualized on our website. We also have a map that showcases all of our Bikeways projects if you're interested in seeing what others have done before. And we also recently updated our project cost estimator to reflect inflation since the last time it was updated. I'm also a resource to you. We are resources to you here at MDOT. So prior to the grant application opening, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. So all of this information and more lives on our Bikeways website, and you can see the project eligibility requirements, our state design standards and guidelines, the updated project cost estimator, the application portal when it opens this spring, our interactive map of Bikeways projects, and more. So I encourage you to check it out and reach out if you have questions. And with that, I want to thank you all for coming today and for your interest in Bikeways. Here's our program email where you can reach me, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Thank you.
All right, so I am here to talk about the Urban Tree Grant Program. Quick note, I am here on behalf of Nick Kurtz, who's our current program coordinator. He had a conflict, so he's going to be your best bet for first point of contact for questions on projects. I have his business card, and his contact information is in these slides. The Urban Tree Grant Program is a grant program that provides funding to communities and other eligible organizations to plant trees in that community that has lost trees as a result of a transportation facility project, both past and current projects. This also includes the construction phase of projects, so as the construction for projects kind of expands into communities, that is eligible as well. This was the result of a bill that was passed in 2021 in response to some impact from the Purple Line project, but it is for any transportation facility project that takes place on state-owned transportation projects. When we were standing up this grant program, we partnered with the Department of Natural Resources and the Maryland Urban Community Forestry Committee to stand up this grant program. Our grant program has $5,000 available for tree planting projects and more funding available for pocket forest projects. And pocket forest projects are those that recreate the forest environment from understory all the way up to canopy trees in a pocket, kind of if you picture a little forest in your pocket area. And the trees planted under this program must not be tied to mitigation requirements for any activities, private or public, that happen. So if you have to plant trees in response to a project for mitigation, for permitting or anything, we can't fund those tree plantings. And because we don't fund mitigation, those trees are every tree planted with MDOT Urban Trees grant money is eligible to count towards the state of Maryland's 5 million trees initiative goal, which is a goal to plant and maintain 5 million trees in the state of Maryland by the end of 2031. So for eligibilities, our eligible organization list is very broad. Nonprofits, schools, communities, businesses, homeowners associations, youth and civic groups, institutions of higher education, counties, municipalities, and forest conservation district boards. They must be in areas where trees were removed as part of a construction of a transportation project, current or past. You do not need to document that tree loss. When we were standing up this grant program, that question of what does that mean in the statute. And so if you think back to past transportation projects, especially some of the larger ones, the impact to the community, there's almost always tree loss, at least in some of the areas. And so you don't have to document, hey, we lost 3 trees and we get 3 back. That's not how this works. The planting sites must take place in an urban area as designated by the U.S. Census Bureau. So your organization doesn't have to have their main offices in the urban area, but the planting location where the trees go in must be in an urban area. Projects per the statute, that priority projects are those in communities affected by environmental justice, heat island effect, or those that increase the urban tree canopy. And that is the intention to kind of cover the urban area with canopy cover so that there aren't just kind of pockets and little plantings, one-off plantings. Timelines, so we have, as Sean mentioned, moved to rolling submissions of the applications. We are nested under the Maryland Urban Community Forestry Committee's grant program, and so we defer to their deadlines. So you can submit applications throughout the year, and we review them based on 2 timelines based on the spring and fall planting season. There's windows of time in the year that is the ideal time to plant trees. And so we review applications. If any application submitted before January 15th at 11:59, which is very close, you are considered for spring planting projects, and then again in the fall, July 15th at 11:59. So we're very different from some of the other grant programs in that we actually have 2 evaluations for funding every single fiscal year, July and February, or January and July. So if you missed the January 15th deadline, but you've got a project and you want to talk to us about it, we can get you ready for the July 15th planting cycle. Once you're awarded the funds, you have up to a year to get the trees in the ground and report to us. We know that sometimes, you know, your planting day, you get rained out and then you plant in the fall, because if it gets too late in the summer, then your trees have less likelihood to survive. The application online is a very low lift, and not in a bad way. It's just kind of what we did to help make it easier for communities to get trees. We are an online application like many of the other grants. We are in the one-stop portal. And the key pieces in the application is a map of the planting location, so a visual with kind of where the trees are going to go and your species of trees. And one thing I was remiss to say is that all trees have to be native to the state of Maryland. We defer to DNR's determination for that, and we use the USDA plants database as well. Project scope, so how many trees, what are those tree species? We do fund some shrubs and understory to encourage the survivability of those trees, both middle canopy and upper canopy. And then what is the project impact? So what is that? What is the benefit to the communities, wildlife, increasing greening? We've been talking a lot about how do we get trees into different pedestrian or bike pathways to increase the shade cover there, to kind of increase and have better conditions for some of those stretches that are all in the sun. You have to identify the transportation facility or transportation facility project that impacted your community, and then any supporting partners if you've got organizations that you're working with, budget obviously, and a tree maintenance plan. So tree planting projects require 1-year maintenance, and pocket forests, if you come in for that, require 3 years of maintenance. And one thing that's really cool about our grant program is if we fund your tree planting, say we fund it this year, and in 2 years you need to remulch them or have them pruned for survivability, you can come back to us for additional maintenance funds to support the survivability of those trees. We have an urban tree grant program website with a really good breadth of resources. So the website is linked here as well. It has the application questions, so you can read through what you have to do before you even go into the application, how to apply, FAQ, and a sample application, so you can see kind of what a gold standard application is. They're pretty short applications, especially in comparison to some of these other ones. This is state funded, and we also work very closely with DNR Maryland Forest Service, and they provide technical assistance, so they can help you develop your planting plan from the beginning. So if you say, I need trees in this community park to increase canopy cover, to increase walkability of the area, they can sit with you and figure out what species make the most sense in those conditions. They will come out and help do a site visit. They'll look at your soil conditions, talk to you about what does it look like when it rains, is there pooling, those kind of things, so that the trees that are planted really benefit the site that they're on, and your community. And then Nick Kurtz is the application support, so you're going to go to him first. He is your best bet for support. We've been running for a couple of years now. I think we're in our 4th year. And so this is just a highlight of some of the past projects. We have funded projects that plant 350 trees, and we have funded projects that plant 1 or 2. Street trees are eligible. Pit trees are eligible in the city. As long as you are in an urban area and your community has a transportation project within a mile buffer is generally what we use. We will go up to 2 miles from the transportation project for those larger projects, thinking Purple Line and major highways. So just talk to us if you have any questions about your community's eligibility. So just touching on these really quick, University of Maryland Eastern Shore replaced some dying invasive trees with native sourwoods, and it's much larger now. That was that was in our 2nd funding cycle. In Cumberland, we supported the planting of about 20 trees, I believe, at the Episcopal Church of Cumberland. And what's really cool about that site, which I didn't realize until last year's Grants Roadshow when we were out there, and I don't know the road name, but there's a road where if you stand at the top, there's a bikeways pedestrian improvement project that you can see that was successful, and then the Episcopal Church is up there, and then just a little bit further is a rail project that was funded. And so it's a really nice snapshot of where grants work together to kind of collaboratively improve the community, access greening, all of those things. And then last year we funded a series of plantings at Charles County Public Schools as part of their climate justice and environmental justice initiative, and we planted 5 to 6, depending on the site, trees at 6 different schools across Charles County, and that helped with K through 12 education and programming that was tied to it, as well as increasing the shade cover on the tree the school's grounds. And that's it. Reminder, our applications are due January 15th, but we have a second application cycle this year, July 15th. We always review those twice, and we have quite a bit of funding left, available for funding projects this year. So Nick is going to be your first point of contact. You can reach out to me. I'm going to just send you right to Nick. So he's our MDOT Tree Program Coordinator, and he is here this afternoon. He'll be available around 2. So if you stick around and you want to talk about a specific project with him, he will be available at 2. I'm also available, but as you heard earlier, I'm kind of playing, I got 2 hats on today, so not as available as Nick would be. But you can reach out to either of us, and the website is online, and we have a past planting projects map, so you can look at what other projects have been funded to kind of help you with your application. And that's it.
Good morning. My name is Brett Ripken. I am with the Office of Rail and Intermodal Freight here at the Secretary's office, and just want to go over a little bit about our program, types of projects and locations that are eligible, and the process. So this is a state-funded, competitive, reimbursable grant program administered by Rail and Intermodal Freight. We're looking to provide grant funding to local jurisdictions, railroads, rail-served businesses, key agencies around the state. And the main focus is to preserve rail corridors, support economic development, and foster sustainability and innovative technologies. We kind of came to this program, it was new last year, we identified some gaps where we had some available funding, but we were having problems getting it out on the street and getting it into good projects. Several neighboring states of ours have similar programs supporting the railroad, freight rail businesses and industries, so we were looking to take advantage of those type of programs. We really want to make targeted investments, better leverage the funding that's out there in all the MDOT programs, kind of getting to what Joe was talking about with alignment and partnership. So this is an 80-20 local match, similar to a lot of our other programs. Like I said, this is our second year. Our first year, we were very happy with the types of applications received. We received about a dozen of them, and we awarded 5 grants for just over $1.2 million in funding. Last cycle, we are programmed for about $500,000 of funding this year, but that could go up or down depending on the types of applications that we get. So some of the projects that we did award last year, one of them was for a siding or a switch in a rail yard to get that back in service to improve operations up there. We also funded some rail infrastructure improvements to a quarry, and that's going to help them increase some output at their facility and get trucks and not rely on trucking the quarry material so much and decreasing emissions that way. We also funded a study We funded a study to look at the getting an inactive rail bridge on a rail corridor in the Eastern Shore to see what it would take to get that bridge back in shape for a future Rails to Trail project. And we're also looking at we funded an environmental study in a rail yard to see if they can get the best and the highest use out of that. So those are the types of projects we're looking at. Really, the projects, we're funding 2 types of projects, either design or planning. Like I said, those are looking for feasibility assessments or looking at the study economic benefits, environmental impacts, if you have any right-of-way issues, to get a handle of those. Those are, pre-construction, planning type studies. Generally, those are going to be completed within, 1 to 2 years. And then we're also taking applications for funding construction projects. So this is if you have a side track or a siding, certain eligible rail crossings, we'd look at drainage improvements, other major improvement projects. Design could be part of this award on the construction side of things, and projects generally are going to be completed within 3 years. These aren't for routine maintenance on rail corridors, unless it was like some type of innovative technology, but we talked to you about that. So really the ideal project is to take a underused or a not currently used freight corridor and get that back into active freight service. So working with a railroad or working with rail-served businesses and looking how to get more freight traffic out there. That's a host of benefits for the state, host of benefits for our local business partners. So that's what we're looking for. Another project, ideally, we'd love to get an application is kind of like a corridor study. So if you were a local government and you had a rail corridor going through your county or jurisdiction, and if you wanted to partner with the railroad, whether it's active or inactive, or the local businesses, and trying to get a kind of corridor study or a corridor plan together to really see how we can improve rail service or increase rail service. So eligible project locations, you must be located along or adjacent of a rail corridor. Doesn't necessarily have to be a state-owned rail corridor. Applicants must have demonstrated control of the area, so you got to own it or have an active lease or some other contract to be operating there. Additional consideration will be given for economically disadvantaged communities, or communities that have been affected by climate change, pollution, or environmental hazards. And you also have to be, if you're a business, you have to be in good standing with the state. As I mentioned, some of the project focus areas are, the main one is the expansion of rail-served businesses or rail service. So if you have a rail corridor that's underused, not being used, ways to get more business, more freight traffic on the rails, that's what we're really looking for. Also, safety and security is a big thing. So we have a project where maybe a trespassing issue or some other safety improvements. We'd love to hear about those. Most grade crossing improvements are handled through another program through the state, but we can get you in contact with that as well if you have a specific grade crossing project or an idea you want to look at. Also, we're looking for system preservation and modernization. So if there's somewhere you could get an innovative technology, get more bang for your buck on the money you're spending to preserve your corridors or the money that the state is providing to preserve these corridors. Always looking to improve the environmental conditions and sustainability out there. That gets to some of your, getting trucks off the road. If we can do that through rail service, that's always a good thing. And fiscal responsibility. The state spends, a large amount of money preserving these corridors, and we're always looking to get the most money out of what we're putting out there already. Now, one thing we wouldn't fund is for developing an application for another grant program, but one possibility, and this gets to that leveraging and partnership, is if you were applying for another grant program, say bikeways or rec trails or TAP, you could possibly use our program if it was along a rail corridor for part of that or some of that or all of that local match. So that's one way we can leverage it. All right, so where we are in the timeline, so we're kicking off our outreach now. So we do have a website. It's on the MDOT website. You can search freight rail, and then you can get some more information. We have frequently asked questions, resources, etc. We also have our project readiness checklist, so you can go through that. We'd love to hear from you. You can float that to us ahead of time, or if you have questions about the process. We're going to be working with our partners and prospective applicants through April. We hope to get the application portal again on Maryland One Stop open in April. We'll have that open through June. Review and evaluate over the summer. Looking to award end of the summer, beginning of fall, and then we'll announce the awards and we'll get those implemented and obligated in the fall. And so you can get started on your projects. Like I mentioned, these projects are kind of 2 to 3 year time frames. They certainly, if you've got a project that's ready to go and you're ready to hit the ground running, we'd love to hear about it and get working. I'm thinking, check out our website. If If you have any questions or want to know more about the projects, what types of projects are eligible, you can always reach out to me, or you can reach out through our email on our website. But thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Walinskis. I am the program manager for the Transit-Oriented Development, Capital Grant, and Revolving Loan Fund. So this is a new program. We launched it in 2025. We've gone through 2 rounds of the program. It was established through state legislation and offers $5 million in state funds annually for various TOD improvements. Something that is important to note about this program is that it's tied to the state's TOD designation program, which we are always accepting applications on a year-round rolling basis for new state TOD designated areas. So if you are not already designated and that's something you're interested in pursuing, I also oversee that program. So happy to talk. Generally speaking, the eligibility for the program is local jurisdictions and their private development partners. So the way that we have implemented the program so far is that local jurisdictions are eligible for grants and or a loan if it's a revenue generating project, and then development partners are eligible for loans. And then the lead applicant should always be the funding recipient. It's important to note that if a developer wants to apply for funding from the program, they do need to have the jurisdiction signed on to their application. So just making sure that the private efforts are advancing the local jurisdiction's goals for the designated area. So I just want to note about these terms. These are the award categorizations we've used for the first 2 rounds. These are always subject to change in the future, but just wanted to go off of what we've done for the first 2 rounds. So for local jurisdictions seeking TOD improvements, we had 2 categories of grants. First, for design planning, we had up to $250,000 for design planning for an eligible TOD, with a 10% local match, and that can apply to a lot of different things. So that could be, streetscape improvements, that could be complete streets improvements, it could be various station infrastructure. So there's a lot that can fall under that design planning umbrella. And then similarly, up to $1 million in total funding for the construction of public infrastructure improvements. That's also 10% local match. That really is up to $750,000 in grant funds. We have offered an additional $250,000 in loans. And then for revenue generating projects, up to $1 million in loans that are eligible. And then for developers, we're essentially offering gap financing, so up to $1 million in lending for development projects that advance the local jurisdiction's efforts. And we have been lending, the loan terms we've been offering are, so far, have been at Treasury rate. So, like I mentioned, eligible projects must directly serve a state-designated TOD area, and at any given time, jurisdictions can apply for up to 1 project per TOD area, but jurisdictions may have multiple state-designated sites, so they can submit multiple applications. For example, Baltimore City, we would say you can't submit 2 applications for West Baltimore, but you could submit an application for West Baltimore and Reisterstown Plaza. So limiting it to 1 per station, but many jurisdictions have multiple TOD sites within their boundaries. And I'll talk a little bit more. We don't have any open application periods right now. We did 2 in Baltimore City, but I'm always happy to, whether we're in an open application period or not, I'm always happy to discuss what types of projects would be eligible so that jurisdictions can start to think through what they may want to have in the pipeline. And so just a little bit more background on the TOD designation program, if that's something that you're interested in. This is a program that has existed since 2008. It's a way of, it's essentially, a recognition of planning. So we're seeking to designate station areas in the state that have demonstrated that they are intentionally planning for TOD. So, and we kind of reshaped the application process. There previously wasn't an application process. Counties would historically indicate in their annual priority letter that they wanted to designate a site. There wasn't a lot of transparency in the process. It wasn't a lot of structure to it. So we wanted to reshape that in the new administration. And so we launched a new application in 2024. And essentially the application goes through 9 different planning criteria and just asks jurisdictions to demonstrate what levels of planning, any ongoing development activity. It's meant to be a very engaged process. It's as much the state wanting to look at local jurisdiction efforts and see where we can support, as well as just us being aware of what local jurisdictions are doing. So for the applications that we have received so far, and we've designated 3 new station areas so far since launching the new application process. It's been a really great opportunity. It's for, to be a two-way street of information and ways to support jurisdictions in their TOD efforts. But the application for funding from the TOD fund is really meant to be funding to advance the planning vision that local jurisdictions put forth through the TOD designation process. So this is an incentive that we've added to TOD designation to help jurisdictions actually realize the plans that they're putting forth. So we held 2 rounds of funding in the pilot year. In our first round, we awarded 3 awards, and we are reviewing applications from our second round. And so since this was the first year of the program, we are going to take a moment to just, look at how those 2 rounds went and think about if we want to make any revisions to program terms, make sure it's as effective as possible. So that being said, if you are, someone who has applied, someone who is interested, and you have any feedback, there are some parts of the program that we are statutorily bound to. There are some areas where we have room for flexibility in how we implement the program. I know one thing in particular that we really want to take a look at is the terms, the lending terms that we have offered to private developers, see if we do have any more flexibility in the types of terms that we offer for the private loan portion, but certainly open to feedback. But that being said, there will be, we are expecting that there will be, we'll be opening awards sometime in 2026. This is a state mandated annual program, so there will be a round of funding, just TBD on when. But the best way to stay in touch is to sign up for our newsletter at the link you see there, and I'm always happy to talk more about the TOD fund or the TOD designation program.
I'll go really quickly so we still have some time for questions. Like Sean said, we have a couple of resources that even if not for this year's applications, you might want to consider for future applications and prioritizing projects. So you've heard this again and again, to make a compelling story about your application and to utilize our technical assistance on office hours. You guys are already doing that. Congrats on being here. But really, all of the grant managers that you heard from today really do want to hear about your projects in advance and make sure you're applying for something that's eligible, competitive, and you're putting your best foot forward. We're required for all of our federal funding programs and for most of our programs to have a competitive application process. So we want to make sure you're putting, again, your best foot forward and have a compelling story about the outcomes you expect from your project. It's important to always ensure compliance with the grant program and federal regulations. We'll have a little bit more on that. And then in your story, don't forget to demonstrate your capacity to effectively manage your award. We're trying to be good fiduciaries. We are trying to pass all of our audits. We want to make sure that you're able to execute the program and the grants in the time of the award. Some application considerations, really to take into account some of the processes that take longer than others further in advance. So if your grant application requires a benefit cost analysis, go ahead and get that started. If you know you're going to have environmental reviews and approvals, proactively identifying those, making sure you have that listed in your timeline, not only is going to make sure that you're compliant, but shows to us that you're going to be able to effectively manage that grant. And then also accessibility, compliance with ADA and the Civil Rights Act is very important, and making sure you have that in advance documented can take some time. As part of your narrative, also make sure you explain why you picked that project and what your expected outcomes are. So in your project selection, if you have a score that you assigned locally, explain to us what those factors are. If you want to use one of our tools, and I'll get into one of them in a moment, we have different ways to show how you're meeting different metrics for our grants. And then secondly, you can write a Complete Streets objective statement. We updated our Complete Streets policy last year, and moving forward, all projects on the MDOT right-of-way are going to require an objective statement. So this includes the existing conditions and the changes you expect your project to make. So we have different metrics for different modes, things like the bicycle level of traffic stress, volumes and crashes for all users, pedestrian accessibility measures, and then any inclusion of your project in adopted plans. One of our most powerful tools that can help you select projects is One Maryland, One Centerline. This is our authoritative linear referencing system, and we've put more and more layers into this. If you've collected any GIS data, you can input it into One Maryland, One Centerline and have it be compatible with our data on state highways. Anything that you put in, you can take out as well. You can see a lot of different feature classes next to each other. And sorry, there's a lot of words on the screen, but we're very short on time, so these slides will be available after the presentation. But we have so many data events that you can see layered next to each other in One Maryland, One Centerline. You can see how the bicycle level of traffic stress interacts with the speed limits. We're putting in right now all of the school zones across the state. So being able to layer those and then work with our state highway administration, they can pull out for you an analysis that is pretty cool, and it shows on every segment how these things interact. In the long run, maybe again for next year, not this year, there are some designations that can give you extra points on different applications. In Maryland, we have the Sustainable Communities Program that's designated by the Department of Housing and Community Development, but MDOT is part of the Sustainable Growth Subcabinet, and we award points for any sustainable communities. Similarly, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Priority Area is an annual application process that shows you want to work to improve safety for all users. If you have that designation, you also get a point on some of your applications. And then last but not least, generating public support for your project is very important. We encourage you to discuss the projects with local advocacy groups who might be really in touch with the local users for that facility. Present to advisory committee meetings. Make sure your project's in local plans. Attend the annual CTP tours where your elected officials might be present. And then secure all of this in support letters. When we see a diverse support letters from elected officials, from community members, from organizations, that can really push your application over the edge. And so that's all for today. So we still have time for questions. But Sean is inviting everybody to join us on the road.